The cold void of space stretched endlessly in every direction, a silent ocean dotted with distant suns and wandering planets. Among these stars floated a small human exploration ship, the Aurora, glinting silver against the darkness. Its mission was simple: to explore, to observe, and, if possible, to make contact with new civilizations. The crew inside the ship moved with quiet efficiency, each aware that they were traveling into the unknown, where nothing was guaranteed, and danger could appear in a fraction of a second. Somewhere in this distant corner of the galaxy, the Virus, a species as delicate as they were intelligent, sensed a disturbance. Their world, known to outsiders as Lythera, was a place of calm. The Virus had long avoided conflict, choosing instead to build a society focused on learning, art, and harmony. Their cities were beautiful, rising like glass sculptures from the surface of their planets, and their minds were brilliant, capable of understanding mathematics and science far beyond most species. Yet, physically, they were fragile. The lightest force could injure them, and the strongest wind could knock them off balance. They had survived for centuries by using intelligence instead of strength, strategy instead of combat. The first signs of the humans' arrival came as a ripple of energy. Not a physical shock, but something far stranger, something the Virus could feel in their minds. In their very essence, it spread like a pulse, washing over their cities, their scholars, and their leaders. The sensation was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It was not sound, not heat, not radiation. They had no words for it. It was raw, powerful, and overwhelming. The Virus recoiled instinctively, some clutching their heads, others simply frozen in place. One scholar, a small, bright-eyed Virus named Irial, spoke first. His voice trembled as he addressed the council of leaders who had gathered in their highest tower. It feels too intense, he said, his voice barely audible. My species has no defense for this force. It is beyond our understanding. His words caused a stir. The council, usually calm and composed, shifted nervously. None had felt such energy before. None had ever experienced something that seemed alive, that seemed to push at their very minds and hearts. The humans, aboard the Aurora, were unaware of the chaos they had caused. They had detected the Virus's energy signals, yes, but they could not feel the intensity themselves. To them, it was simply another part of space exploration. Captain Alina Reyes leaned over the console, her fingers flying across the controls. We're in the vicinity of their main planet, she said calmly. Sensors show no signs of hostility, but we need to be careful. This is a first contact situation. We proceed slowly. The Virus Council debated what to do. Fear gnawed at their reason. Some suggested hiding, shielding their cities, and cutting off all communication. Others argued for observation, for trying to understand what this strange force was before reacting. Ariel, whose mind was still buzzing from the sensation, knew that hiding would not help. They had already felt it. There was no turning back. We must study it, he urged. We must understand it. If we do not, it may consume us. A small delegation of Virus scientists, equipped with monitoring devices and protective suits designed to shield them from physical harm, was chosen to approach the human ship. They moved carefully, their fragile bodies almost floating above the surface of Lythera as their transport vessel lifted off. With each passing moment, the intense energy from the humans grew stronger. The delegation shivered, not from cold, but from the sheer, overwhelming nature of the sensation. Every step, every breath, felt like it carried the weight of the universe. Finally, they arrived near the Aurora. From a distance, the human ship looked simple, almost elegant. But as the Virus approached, the energy pulse hit them full force. One of the delegation gasped, nearly losing balance. Another whispered, "It is too much." Ariel steadied himself, focusing his mind, trying to block out the feeling. He had spent years studying the universe, preparing for the unknown, but nothing had prepared him for this. It was as if the humans radiated life itself, a combination of strength, confidence, and raw intelligence that the Varys could feel deep in their bones. Captain Reyes noticed the delegation approaching. She activated the ship's external communication system. "Greetings," she said calmly, projecting warmth and calmness in every word. "We come in peace. We mean no harm." The words themselves seemed to carry energy, and Ariel felt it wash over him like a wave. He stumbled slightly, barely catching himself. One of the other Varys, a scientist named Lyra, whispered urgently to Ariel, "Do you feel that? It is unlike anything we have ever sensed. How can they exist like this?" Ariel shook his head. "I do not know. But we must remain composed. Fear will weaken us." Yet even as he spoke, he felt the truth in his own words. The force from these humans was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and something more. It was difficult to describe, even in Varys terms. The humans extended a hand of friendship, offering simple gifts. A small device that projected calming images, a book with human writing, and a sample of their technology. The Varys delegation hesitated. Their species had never interacted with others so directly. Some had read about contact protocols in their archives, but nothing could have prepared them for this intensity. Ariel took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He reached out, accepting one of the devices. The moment he touched it, a rush of energy filled his mind. Visions of human ingenuity, problem-solving, and survival flashed through him. He gasped, staggering backward. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Ariel, are you all right?" she asked. He nodded weakly, though inside, his mind raced. "It is extraordinary," he admitted. "We have never known anything like this. They are different in every way." As the delegation returned to Lythera, they brought with them not just the human devices, but the knowledge that their species had encountered something far beyond their imagination. The council listened in stunned silence as the delegation recounted the experience. The intense force, the overwhelming presence, the sheer adaptability and courage of the humans, it all challenged every assumption the Varys had held about the universe. Some council members were frightened. "If this is a threat, we are defenseless," one said, his voice trembling. "Our weapons are useless. Our shields cannot contain it. We cannot even comprehend it fully." Others, however, saw opportunity. "Perhaps," a council elder suggested, "this is a chance to grow. We may be fragile, but our minds are strong. If we study this force carefully, we might learn from it, and in time, even harness it." Ariel remained quiet, deep in thought. He understood both sides of the argument. Fear was natural, yet curiosity was stronger. The humans had shown no aggression. Their force was intense, yes, but it was also controlled, deliberate, and purposeful. Could his species rise to meet this challenge? Could the Varys learn to interact with something that seemed so far beyond them? As night fell over Lythera, the cities lit up like constellations reflected on the planet's surface. Ariel looked out at the stars, thinking of the human ship floating silently among them. The force that had shaken his people was still present, lingering in the atmosphere like a memory. He felt a mixture of fear, awe, and hope. Humanity, he realized, was not just another species, they were something entirely new. A force of life, intelligence, and willpower that the Varys could neither ignore nor fully understand. The first part of the encounter had ended, but its impact would last far longer. The Varys were fragile, yes, but they were also adaptable, and Ariel knew that the coming days would test them in ways they had never imagined. Humanity had arrived, and with it, a force too intense to ignore. As he closed his eyes and prepared for sleep, Ariel whispered to himself, almost as a prayer, "We have no defense. But maybe we can learn. Maybe we can survive this and become something more." The stars above twinkled silently, and the human ship drifted farther into the unknown, unaware that it had already changed the fate of an entire species. The days after the first encounter were filled with tension on Lythera. The Varys Council held endless meetings, discussing what they had felt, seen, and barely understood. The humans' arrival had shaken their calm world, and the force they radiated lingered in every corner of their cities like a subtle wind. Scholars and scientists were divided. Some insisted on strict observation and isolation, fearing that the humans' power could overwhelm them. Others, led by Ariel, argued that only through understanding could they survive, and perhaps grow stronger. Ariel spent long hours in his study, analyzing the reports from the delegation. He traced the patterns of energy that had surged through their minds, trying to break it down into something measurable. Yet every attempt failed. Their instruments, advanced by Varys standards, simply could not detect or contain the intensity of the force. It was not destructive, yet it was undeniable. It is alive in a way we cannot grasp, he muttered to Lyra, who had joined him in his research. It responds to thought, to intention, to action. It is human. Lyra nodded, her expression serious. They are different. Everything about them is beyond our natural limits. Their strength is not in muscle or reflex, but in the way they think, the way they act. We are fragile in comparison, but perhaps that does not mean we are powerless. Ariel agreed. We must approach this carefully. Curiosity must guide us, not fear. If we act in fear, we will fail. But if we learn, perhaps we can adapt. Meanwhile, the humans aboard the Aurora had also noticed the Varys' hesitation. Captain Alina Reyes understood that first contact was always delicate. They feel threatened, she said during a strategy meeting with her crew. Not because we are dangerous, but because they do not understand us. We need to show them who we are, gently, without overwhelming them further. The humans decided to make a small gesture of goodwill. They transmitted a series of messages in simple, universal signals, images, sounds, and diagrams to the Varys. The transmissions were designed to explain basic human concepts: cooperation, problem-solving, survival, and even ethics. They showed humans building, exploring, helping one another. The images were calm, yet they carried a subtle energy, a demonstration of human ingenuity and focus. The Varys watched the transmissions with a mix of awe and trepidation. Even through images alone, they could sense the intensity of the humans' force. One scholar whispered to Ariel, "It is in every movement, every gesture. Even here, through the screen, I feel it." Ariel nodded silently. He realized that the human strength was not a weapon, it was their ability to face the unknown with courage, to adapt instantly, and to act decisively. This was something the Varys had never truly experienced. After several days, the council agreed to send another delegation, this time with the goal of learning, not just observing. They approached the Aurora more cautiously than before, wary of the energy that had so unsettled them. This group included scientists, philosophers, and strategists, all trained to endure intense experiences. Each member was briefed on controlling fear and maintaining focus. When they arrived, Captain Reyes welcomed them again, smiling warmly. "We are pleased to meet you once more," she said. "We understand that our presence may feel overwhelming. We are not here to harm you. We want to share knowledge and learn together." The Varys were immediately aware of the force radiating from the humans, more subtle now, but still powerful. The energy was no longer entirely chaotic. It carried intention, direction, and calm. It seemed to Ariel that the humans could control it naturally, without effort, and yet they did not use it to intimidate or dominate. It was simply a part of them. Lyra stepped forward cautiously. "Can you teach us?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We cannot resist what we have felt. It is too intense, but perhaps, if we understand it, we might survive." Captain Reyes nodded. "We can guide you. But you must understand this force is not magic. It is a combination of thought, discipline, and willpower. You will need patience, focus, and courage. Thus began the first lessons. The humans designed controlled simulations for the Varus delegation. At first, even the simplest exercises were almost unbearable. The Varus had to solve complex problems under intense mental pressure while managing the subtle, overwhelming energy that seemed to push at their minds. Some struggled, clutching their heads or stumbling, unable to withstand the sensation. Ariel led by example. He focused on the sensations, treating them like waves of water rather than attacks. Gradually, he learned to predict the patterns of the human's energy, to adjust his own reactions, and to find moments of clarity amidst the intensity. Every small victory brought hope, not just to him, but to the others watching. Lyra and the other Varus followed, slowly adapting to the human's methods. They began to realize that the force was not a threat to be avoided, it was a challenge to be understood. With guidance, they could channel it, even if only in tiny amounts at first. It was exhausting, and many felt discouraged, but the humans never allowed them to give up. Patience, repetition, and encouragement were key. Outside these lessons, the Varus continued their research. They measured and recorded everything they could, seeking patterns in the energy, trying to make sense of its origin. They discovered that it seemed to respond to thought and emotion, amplifying intentions and clarity of focus. Fear made it chaotic. Confidence made it precise. The Varus realized that this force was not something they could fight or defend against in traditional ways. Instead, it required understanding, control, and inner strength. During one exercise, Ariel experienced a breakthrough. As he focused, the energy that had once been overwhelming now felt like a wave he could ride rather than resist. He solved a complex simulation problem under pressure, feeling the human's force flowing alongside his thoughts, guiding rather than controlling him. He looked at the others, his face glowing with pride. "It is possible," he said. "We can learn it. We can adapt." Word of these successes spread quickly across Lithera. Some Varus still feared the humans, but more were inspired. The council began to discuss broader implications. If they could learn to interact safely with the human's force, their society could grow in ways they had never imagined. Their fragile bodies would remain, yes, but their minds could become stronger, faster, and more creative. Humanity's arrival, once feared, now seemed like a gift of potential. Meanwhile, the humans observed with careful interest. Captain Reyes spoke privately to her officers. "They are capable of more than they know. They are afraid, yes, but that fear is not weakness, it is awareness. If we continue to guide them, they may become allies, friends, or even something more than we expected. We must be patient." The days turned into weeks. The Varus delegation began to see results. Where once the force had nearly paralyzed them, now they could interact with it cautiously. Their understanding was far from complete, but their fear had lessened, replaced with curiosity and determination. Even their physical responses began to improve. They moved with greater confidence, their reflexes sharper, their minds more alert. One evening, as the two species observed Lithera's twin moons rising over the horizon, Ariel turned to Captain Reyes. "We are beginning to understand," he said quietly. "Not everything, but enough to know that fear is no longer our only response. Your force, it can be a guide, if we learn to respect it." Captain Reyes smiled. "That is the first step. Respect, understanding, patience. With those, you can achieve far more than you imagine." The lesson of the human's force was clear. It was not something to attack, avoid, or fear. It was something to comprehend and work with. Humanity's power lay not in weapons or raw strength, but in their adaptability, courage, and intelligence. The Varus were beginning to see that what had first seemed overwhelming could now become a bridge to growth and discovery. As night fell over Lythra, the planet's cities glimmered like scattered gems under the twin moons. The Varus delegation returned home, exhausted but exhilarated. The first true understanding of the human's force had begun. They had survived, and more importantly, they had learned that survival was not enough. They could thrive if they embraced the challenge. Ariel stood alone on a balcony, staring at the stars and thinking of the human ship now far above. He realized that what had begun as a terrifying encounter had become an opportunity unlike any in Vayrus history. Humanity had arrived not as conquerors, but as catalysts, showing that true strength came from mind, courage, and determination. He whispered softly to himself, "We still have much to learn. But perhaps this intensity is not our enemy. Perhaps it is the key to becoming more than we ever dreamed." The stars above remained silent witnesses, while far above, the aurora drifted peacefully, unaware that it had already changed a civilization. The weeks passed, and the Vayrus delegation grew more confident. Their first exposure to the humans' force had been overwhelming, and the initial lessons had tested them to their limits. Yet now, something remarkable was beginning to take shape. Even the most fragile among them had started to adapt. While the energy still pressed against their minds, it no longer paralyzed them. It no longer whispered fear into their ears. Instead, they began to recognize patterns, to predict the force's rhythm, and, in small ways, to work with it. Ariel led the next set of exercises, knowing that progress came only through challenge. The humans had designed simulations that were subtle but intense, designed to push the Vayrus beyond their natural limits without causing harm. One such simulation was a labyrinth of shifting energy fields projected within a holographic arena. The walls moved unpredictably, responding to the participants' thoughts and emotions. If they panicked, the walls became harder to navigate. If they remained calm and focused, the labyrinth flowed more smoothly. The first Vayrus to enter the simulation trembled. Every pulse of energy, every shift in the walls, felt like it was crushing their fragile minds. She staggered and nearly fell, gripping the edge of the arena for support. Ariel watched carefully, speaking in soothing tones, reminding her to breathe and focus. Slowly, she steadied herself, taking deliberate steps. The walls no longer pressed at her mind with the same intensity. They flowed around her movements. A small smile broke across her face. "I can feel it moving with me," she whispered. Lyra followed next, and the pattern repeated. The Vayrus were fragile, yes, but their intelligence and adaptability were formidable. Every step they took, every success in the simulation, strengthened not only their bodies but also their confidence. The humans observed silently, offering guidance only when needed. They encouraged, they corrected, and above all, they remained patient. Captain Reyes watched Ariel closely. "They are learning faster than we expected," she said to her officers. "Fragile, but capable. They are discovering something important on their own resilience." Outside the simulations, the Vayrus continued to experiment with the energy. They noticed small but significant changes in themselves. Their reflexes were quicker, their concentration sharper. The intense force that had once made them dizzy and panicked now seemed like a tool they could manipulate. It responded to thought, but also to emotion. If they approached it with fear, it resisted. If they approached it with focus and calm, it flowed naturally. This realization brought hope to even the most skeptical among them, yet not all was smooth. Some Vayrus struggled to adapt. One young scientist, Kara L., had attempted the simulation 3 times without success. Each attempt left him exhausted, his mind reeling from the overwhelming intensity. He felt small and powerless, questioning whether he belonged among the delegation. Ariel found him afterward, sitting alone in the observation deck. "Do not give up," Ariel said gently. "This force is not your enemy. It is a mirror. It reflects your focus and courage. You must learn to control yourself first before you can control it." Karael nodded, though doubt still clouded his eyes. "I try, but it is too much. I cannot bear it." Ariel placed a hand on his shoulder, careful not to harm him. "Then we will find another way. You will not fail, not if you do not stop trying. We are fragile, yes, but we are also capable. This is the lesson we must carry forward." Unquote. We must carry forward. The humans, sensing the struggle, introduced a new exercise. This one was simpler in appearance but required a deeper understanding of the force. The Varys were asked to move objects within a controlled chamber using focus and mental coordination. The objects were light, almost weightless, but the energy required to manipulate them was immense. At first, almost everyone failed. The objects darted unpredictably, colliding with walls and sending bursts of energy that made the Varys stagger. Ariel took a deep breath and closed his eyes. He centered himself, thinking of the humans' calm demeanor, their patience, and the way they had guided him. Slowly, he reached out with his mind. The object in front of him shivered, then floated steadily into place. The sensation was overwhelming at first, but he adjusted, letting the force guide him, rather than resist it. When he opened his eyes, the other Varys stared in astonishment. If Ariel could do it, they could too. One by one, they tried again, this time with better focus. Lyra's first successful attempt brought cheers and relief. Carol hesitated, fear still pressing at his mind. But Ariel stayed beside him, whispering encouragement. Breathe. Focus. Do not fight the force. Let it move with you. Slowly, Carael extended his hands, and the object lifted into the air. It wobbled dangerously, but he adjusted. After several tense moments, it hovered steadily before him. His eyes widened with disbelief and joy. I did it, he whispered. This small victory spread quickly throughout the delegation. Even those who had doubted themselves began to push harder, to challenge their limits. The Varys were fragile, yes, but they were not helpless. They discovered that courage, focus, and persistence were stronger than fear. Humanity's force, once terrifying, had become a teacher. Outside the controlled exercises, the Varys began experimenting with the force in practical ways. They learned to use it to enhance communication, to strengthen their city defenses in non-destructive ways, and even to improve the efficiency of their machines. The lessons were slow, careful, and sometimes painful, but progress was undeniable. Their fragile bodies were still vulnerable, but their minds were expanding, and that expansion made them more confident in their world and themselves. Yet the challenge was not just physical or mental, it was also cultural. Some Varys still feared that the humans' force could overwhelm them completely. Old traditions clashed with the new possibilities. Councils argued over whether this was safe or whether it threatened their society. Some elders warned that reliance on such energy could make them weak in ways they could not predict. Others argued that fear alone could destroy them, and that the humans' arrival had opened doors they had no choice but to walk through. Ariel found himself mediating these debates. "We are learning," he said firmly. "Not everything, not yet. But every day, we understand a little more. Fear has always protected us, but now curiosity and courage can guide us further. We are fragile, yes, but fragile does not mean powerless." As part of their training, the humans introduced a scenario designed to test the Varys even further. The delegation had to work together to solve a series of challenges that required precision, focus, and trust. Objects had to be moved, paths navigated, and problems solved under the intense pressure of the force. Some failed, some succeeded partially, but every attempt taught them something new. They learned to trust one another, to anticipate patterns, and to use the humans' energy as a tool rather than a threat. Captain Reyes observed the progress with quiet satisfaction. "They are discovering something profound," she said to her officers. "It is not just about controlling the force, it is about discovering their own limits, and then realizing they can exceed them. That is the essence of humanity. The courage to face the unknown, and the determination to grow beyond it." By the end of the simulations, the Varys were exhausted but exhilarated. They had faced the humans' force in ways that had once seemed impossible. Some had failed, yes, but they had learned from those failures. The delegation returned to Lythra with stories of small victories, shared strategies, and a sense of hope that had been absent before. Ariel stood on the observation balcony once more, looking at the stars and thinking of the human ship drifting silently above. The force that had first terrified him now felt like a challenge rather than a threat. He realized that the Veyris were changing not physically, but mentally and emotionally. Their society, once guided only by caution and intellect, was beginning to embrace courage, adaptability, and resilience. Humanity had arrived as a teacher, and the lessons were only beginning. Lyra joined him quietly, her eyes reflecting the twin moons of Lithera. "Do you think we can truly master it?" she asked. Ariel smiled faintly. "Not yet. But we can learn. And learning is the first step. Fear once ruled us, but now curiosity and courage will guide our path. The human's force is not our enemy, it is a challenge, and we are rising to meet it." As the night deepened, the lights of Lithera shimmered, a symbol of fragile beings taking bold steps towards something greater. Humanity's presence had brought fear. Yes, but also possibility. And in the hearts and minds of the Veyris, hope was growing stronger than ever. The first true trials were over, but the journey had only begun. In the days to come, the Veyris would face even greater challenges, testing their limits and shaping their future. But for the first time, they understood that being fragile did not mean being weak, and that the force which had once threatened them could now help them become something more than they had ever imagined. Months had passed since humanity's arrival near Lithera, and the Veyris had changed more than anyone could have imagined. The initial shock of the humans' intense force had faded, replaced by determination, curiosity, and a growing confidence in their own abilities. Where once fear ruled, now cautious optimism guided their actions. Ariel looked over the city from the balcony of the council tower, feeling the energy of his people and of the planet itself. He could sense that something fundamental had shifted. The humans' lessons had not been easy. Many Veyris had stumbled. Some had failed entirely. And yet every failure had taught them something new. They had learned to move with the energy instead of resisting it, to focus rather than panic, to act with calm determination rather than fear. The fragile species had discovered a strength that lay not in muscle or shields, but in courage, intelligence, and unity. The council gathered in the largest hall of the capital city, eager to witness the culmination of their learning. Ariel stood before them, alongside Lyra and the other members of the delegation, who had become leaders in their own right. "We have learned much," Ariel began, his voice steady and confident. "The human's force is no longer a mystery to us. We have studied it, practiced with it, and begun to integrate it into our lives. What once overwhelmed us can now guide us, if we approach it with care and respect." The council members listened intently. Some were still cautious, their voices tinged with doubt. "We are still fragile," one elder pointed out. "We cannot withstand it fully, and we must not overestimate our abilities." "What if we fail?" Ariel nodded. "Fragility remains, yes. But strength is not defined only by body or shields. It is defined by resilience, by courage, by the ability to learn and adapt. We have survived each trial, and in doing so, we have grown stronger mentally, emotionally, and as a society." To demonstrate their progress, the delegation arranged a series of public simulations. The citizens of Lithera watched as their leaders moved through holographic arenas, manipulating the intense energy with precision and focus. Objects floated at their command, pathways shifted smoothly under their guidance, and challenges that had once seemed impossible were now overcome with calm determination. Gasps of awe echoed through the crowds. For the first time, the Veyris saw themselves not as fragile beings at the mercy of overwhelming force, but as capable, adaptable, and strong. Ariel led one of the demonstrations. He focused on a complex series of moving platforms, guiding them with his mind through a shifting maze. The force pushed at him, still intense, but he no longer struggled against it. Instead, he flowed with it, anticipating its movements, using its energy to sharpen his actions. When he reached the final platform, the crowd erupted in cheers. Lyra joined him, guiding several objects through another challenging arena. Even Cariel, once the most hesitant of all, now moved with confidence, showing that perseverance and patience could overcome fear. Captain Reyes watched from the observation deck of the Aurora, a small smile on her face. She had seen this transformation in other civilizations before, but the Vaeris were unique. Their fragility had not been a weakness, it had been a challenge, a test of their adaptability and intelligence. Humanity's presence had been intense, yes, but it had been a catalyst, and the Vaeris had risen to meet it. Beyond demonstrations, the Vaeris began integrating the lessons into daily life. Schools adapted new curricula to include exercises in focus, discipline, and controlled interaction with the human's force. Factories and laboratories began experimenting with energy-assisted technology, increasing efficiency without risking harm. Even art and music shifted subtly. Inspired by the intensity of the human force, creativity surged as citizens found ways to express themselves while engaging with this powerful energy in safe and controlled ways. Ariel walked through the city streets one evening, observing the changes. Citizens moved with quiet confidence. Their actions deliberate, their minds focused. Children played with small, harmless energy objects, learning control from an early age. Scholars debated new applications for their understanding, while artists experimented with flowing energy patterns in their creations. Lithera was alive with potential. The human's force, once terrifying, had become an integral part of life, not as a threat, but as a source of inspiration and growth. The council met again to discuss the next phase of integration. "We have learned much, but there is more to achieve," said an elder. "Our civilization is changing. We must ensure that this force is used wisely, that it does not consume us, and that our traditions remain respected." Ariel agreed. Integration is the next step. We will not rely solely on the human's methods. We will combine them with our own wisdom, our knowledge of Lithera, and our cultural values. We are not changing who we are becoming more capable versions of ourselves, Lyra added. And we will continue to learn. Humanity has shown us what is possible. Now it is our responsibility to take that knowledge, adapt it, and use it to build a stronger, safer, and more enlightened society. The humans remained for a time, assisting in the integration process, guiding the Vaeris as they adapted to this new way of living. They offered advice, shared experiences, and encouraged experimentation, yet they never imposed themselves, never dominated. They understood that true strength came not from control, but from guidance, patience, and trust. Finally, the time came for the humans to depart. The aurora floated silently above Lithera, ready to continue its journey through the stars. Citizens gathered along the city's terraces, watching as the humans prepared to leave. Ariel stood among them, reflecting on how far his people had come. The initial panic, the overwhelming intensity, the fear of the unknown, all of it had led to growth, understanding, and a new sense of possibility. Captain Reyes approached Ariel, offering a hand in farewell. "You have done well," she said warmly. "Your species has adapted in ways few could imagine. You are capable, resilient, and ready for whatever the universe brings next." Ariel shook her hand firmly, a small smile on his face. "Your presence has changed us. We are stronger than we were, and we know now that fragility does not equal weakness. We will continue to learn, to adapt, and to grow. Your force, it is now part of our story." As the aurora lifted off, the citizens of Lithera watched it drift into the endless expanse of space. The stars reflected off its hull, a symbol of possibility and progress. For the Vaeris, humanity's arrival had been intense, even terrifying, but it had also been transformative. Their world, once defined by caution and fragility, was now a place of courage, curiosity, and potential. Ariel looked out over the city one last time before night fully settled. The twin moons glowed softly, illuminating streets alive with energy and purpose. Children practiced their focus exercises, scholars discussed new ideas, and artists experimented with flowing energy patterns. Life on Lithera had changed, and the transformation would continue for generations. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes bright with hope. "We have learned to face the unknown," she said. "We have learned to rise to challenges that once seemed impossible. The humans showed us the way, but we have made it our own." Ariel nodded. "Yes. They taught us that strength is more than physical power. It is courage, focus, adaptability, and the will to face the unknown. We will remember that. We will carry it forward." The city hummed with quiet excitement as night deepened. For the first time in their history, the virus felt not fragile, but capable. Humanity had brought intensity, yes, but it had also brought opportunity, and the virus had seized it, not with fear, but with determination and wisdom. As Ariel turned to leave, he glanced one last time at the stars above. Somewhere out there, the humans continued their journey, unaware of the legacy they had left behind. But on Lythera, their force had planted seeds of growth, courage, and resilience that would shape the future. He whispered softly to himself, a quiet affirmation for his people. "We are fragile, but we are not weak. We have no defense against fear. But courage will guide us. We have seen the intensity, we have faced it, and we have grown. Our future is ours to shape." The night embraced Lythera, a world transformed. Humanity's presence had been brief, yet its impact would last forever. The virus, once overwhelmed by a force they could not comprehend, now stood ready to meet the universe on their own terms, guided by intelligence, courage, and the lessons they had learned. For the first time, Ariel felt it fully, the sense of hope, possibility, and strength that came from facing the unknown and rising above it. Humanity had shown them a force too intense to ignore, and the virus had proven that even the most fragile species could become extraordinary.